Hopefully it works. It is recording. So, hello everyone. Welcome to AlePsics, the podcast. Just a normal podcast, but more controversial and shorter, hopefully. So, today we will be talking about the 2021 elections in Mexico, and I couldn't have chosen a better person to talk about this. And I'm so thankful that he accepted. Let me
Well,
introduce you to today's guest, Eduardo Becerra Torres. And he was the first student to obtain the bachelor degree in Earth Science in Mexico by the National Autonomous University of Mexico. And he just finished a PhD in geology at the University of Bristol and is back in Mexico City. He, along with his friends Barbara, Christian, and Claudio, all of them Chilean, if I'm not mistaken,
yes, they are.
some other guests have created the multi-platform podcast Los Millennials Si Hablan de Política. Millennials do talk about politics. So welcome, Becerra. Long time no see. While compiling
Yeah.
your summary, I recalled those days during our summer project at Universum Museum,
Yes,
and when you were
exactly. Yeah.
struggling on whether to decide on a bachelor's on biology or air science, and well, you made
Exactly.
it.
Yes, because they don't exist. Earth science don't exist in that point. Was the first generation. Yes, exactly. I will be a completely a different person maybe if I study biology. I am not regret. I love Earth science, and I love that I am not a biologist. Eh, I think
Yes.
that that is the thing that I prefer to not be a biologist than a scientist, but I like a lot. It was a cute adventure. I think that I opened a lot of doors. I don't know if I will use completely my skills in earth science for my life, but the trip of studying science and apply science in another aspects of my life open a lot of doors. Well, actually, the podcast and also my small stories in my Instagram that talk about politics is basically use the scientific way to think in things that are not science or not proper science. Was very funny. I like a lot.
Amazing. And actually, yeah, that is definitely something that we all should be doing because sometimes we judge things just because of our logics and we don't base it on something more structured, just as
Yeah.
scientific thought could be. So,
I am thinking that you will say that we will need to do more that mix things. That I think that also you apply these kind of circumstances. A bachelor degree don't mark you like a cow that you need to do that exactly the things that they do. You can use your bachelor degree or whatever level of education whatever you want. I think that
yeah.
we need to do more.
And you're more consistent because you did the bachelor, then the PhD, and you're actually a professor at at UNAM University for this matter. However, for example, I am like the total opposite. I had my bachelor in psychology, working as an administrator and as an English teacher. So that's just
Yeah.
messed up.
Well, I will say as a teacher, I think that if I study a little bit of sociology or psychology, make me very handy. I think that you have a lot of advantage that you study psychology for good to be a good teacher. But yes, I think that another way also apply all the years I am be teacher because I yes I am was my last work was in UNAM. The current work is in UNAM, but I have 12 years giving classes in different levels and in different ways, and give me a little bit of approach of psychology and physiology. But definitely made me very handy if I have a degree in that and make some amount of studies. I don't have the opportunity.
Yeah, I would say meh, because sometimes it is more like just like a mixture of things. But yeah, I mean,
Yes,
I see where you're coming
but it
comes
should be
from.
interesting. At least you have a
Yeah.
name or a word that the way that the phenomenon that you are seeing, observing, or say, oh, that call, whatever, and you can go and search and go more information. That is something that I need to search right now. For example, when I do my stories and talk about politics, that the people say maybe what is the reason that invite a earth scientist to talk about politics. I think that I know a lot of politics. I can be confident about that because yes, when I am searching information because that is the thing that I am very skillful. I found words and say, oh, that is interesting, and I need to go. to the basic things to be a construct of an idea. If I study maybe sociology or psychology, maybe I don't need to go and search that because I already know that. Who
Totally
knows?
agree. Totally agree. And yeah, exactly. Like if somebody's asking why you're invited here, is because I have seen that you're one of the most passionate people I know about politics, and actually that's the first point. So I know that we have just a little time to discuss on some of the main issues that the country is struggling with. So
Mhm.
actually, I wanted to start the discussion with a question based on this passion that you have for politics and your podcast title, right? And it is, why should not only the millennials, but everyone be talking about politics? How does
Mhm.
it all relate to everyone? And what is the conversation for us as millennials?
Well, yes, exactly. I titled that because I believe that the millennials are really passionate right now about politics, at least in Mexico. I have experience out of Mexico, and the millennial people are not having the same phenomenon. It's not having the same in the Nordic hemisphere. That means that USA, UK, part of Europe, the millennials are not that active. But the Latin Americans millennials, they are moving the world. They are discussing things, they are talking about points. But more important, and I think that that is part of your question that I think that is very, very accurate, all we need to talk about politics because all is politics. This thing that the politics is only things that talk about in some extent the lawyers and more properly the proper politicians is a way that they are constructing that avoid that the normal people talk about things because the politics are actions. No matter, for example, if you choose to go to take KFC chicken or you go to a Burger King, there is a political decisions. Maybe you don't know, but you are talking about with your mother or with your father or with your sister and you have negotiations. That is basically politics. The way that you negotiate, the way that you are losing some things, and you are having some benefits from other decisions, that is politics. And actually, if you see and if the people that are hearing go and see the podcast of millennials talking about politics, we are talking about everything, not only proper politics. Yes, we start with some topics, but for example, the first podcast is about the PhD and way the decision that you take a PhD. That is politics. That is the way that you are constructing the society and everything. The decisions that you take day and day are the decisions that you take from if you are taking a public transportation or you are taking a Uber or you're taking whatever. That is a politic decisions. And that is something that we need to be break the taboo about that. Talk about politics is conflict. Talk about politics is something that you are need to be. Yes, as you say, I am very passionate about politics, but I can talk very well with people that are not believing about my way to see the world and discuss the ideas. In the moment that we are closing the debate, and that part in the two hemisphere of polarization in our world, this happen no matter that you are left wing or right wing, no matter that. If you are close to the conversation, you are losing. That is the first point. You are losing if you are turning very polarized in your comments, no matter that you are passionate.
Yes, and I have seen that a lot of times. I have seen that a lot of times, especially, and I think that is something that is happening in Mexico, and we are going to be discussing a little bit on that, I think, because that is something inevitable. Uh, right now, Mexico is becoming a very polarized country in terms of actually being on the left or on the right, supporting one party or another. So,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
stepping into the actual topics for today is the first point that I've got here is violence against politicians. So we've got 2 minutes for each of these points. So let's go ahead. So violence against politicians. We have statistics that a lot of politicians are being either being shot, being threatened. So what does it represent for Mexico from your perspective?
okay. I want to divide and put in context two ways to have violence in Mexico. One is the virtual violence, and the second one is the physical violence. What is the reason that it's good to divide? Because it's not the same. No matter that some politicians or some public people, because also public people say, oh, they are having a lot of threatening and they are attacking me and I have a lot of violence. media and say, oh, that could be escalate to another thing. Not really. I think that the media violence need to be told, need to be indicate something when it's a sexual violence or threatening or something that go with racism, classism, or a kind of misogyny. That kind of things need to be said and say, okay, stop to say that. But say that you will escalate to physical violence, that is complicated. I think that is more similar that you will go to the street and you find a group of people that is having some boards and say, oh, you are not doing your work, or like a protest, like a stand-up. I think that is more like that. And in this scenario, some people can throw you a coke in your in your car, and you have a split and have a stink in your dress. Well, that is something. The other violence, the physical violence that go with murdering, that kind of real threatening, that kill your pet or kill your puppy or kill your cat, that kind of things occur in Mexico. That is another context and have another reasons and have another models. Because in some regions, also the organized crime, but and the thing is that you say organized crime and you say, oh, are the people that control the some regions in Mexico. That is not completely true. The organized crime is based in social and in the state structures born there. These cartels, drug cartels, are not independent, are not the way that the USA tried to say, oh, these are big people, or El Chapo is terrible, they control all. No, El Chapo is only a character that is well manipulated in other sphere, in other circles of politics. And that is, again, that you need to explore a little bit more and say, okay, this violence occur. This is controlled by or acting the physical people that is killing is this group of drug cartel or organized crime. But who is back this organization? Who
That's
is the people
important.
that is the control, and what is the benefits? And the way that you can find that is say, with this skill or with this go down of candidate, who is benefit? Who is having some benefits of this situation? Because in
Exactly.
politics always have a benefit with a result or something that is occurring. Always have a benefit. And the people that is benefit maybe is the people that originally organized this stuff. The organized crime is organized, but it's not organized
Yeah.
as the way that they thinking that, oh, the big capo and there's the people that is down there. It's not like Del Padrino and things that Mario
Yeah.
Puzo is thinking. It's not like that. It's organized crime because people below the scenario is organizing and is planning and is thinking. Well, if you go and see the red spots of organized crime in Mexico, oh, coincidence. It's also the spots that you have long mines, you have a lot of energy resources, petroleum, you have water. All the people, all the hotspots in Mexico that have organized crime have some features in geography or in economy that give benefits. That give us an idea that what is the reason that have organized crime in Mexico. And not only in Mexico, we have organized crime in all the world. But the people that
Yeah.
see the organized crime is in the regions, south regions, that have a lot of natural resources.
And it would explain a lot on why Mexico is one of the, just as you said, this as a country, a spotlight for organized crime, because we are, Mexico is, I think, and you as a scientist in there would agree or disagree with me, but I think that we're one of the richest countries in
Yes, it is.
biodiversity resources. So it is logical to have control on those resources. And oh, totally agree with your question. Who is the one who benefits with that? There is totally um build up, not want to say state, but structure perhaps, in which the person who is supported, and in here I'm putting this on the table for you to perhaps to give more feedback on it, and if you believe this is true or not. But my thinking is, and as per what I have observed at local levels, now that I live in Michoacan, that people who is supported by the organized crime is the one to get to the power. So is that something? And if it is that something, at what levels are we talking about? So only local levels, or are we talking also about like?
Depends. Something that is very interesting, if you see the numbers about the crimes and the installation of crimes in the organized, basically organized crime, is right now that the violence go a little bit low or constant at least. 50% of the incidents is concentrated in few states. And it's very interesting. I will don't say who is the government in these states, but it's very suspicious. At least it's very. I open a lot my eyes when this situation I see. If are very focused points and are very high in organized crime, very high in murderings, in violence, in dead bodies found, very high. In comparison with the rest of the country, we are
Yeah,
talking about 50% of the numbers that have Mexico at all, concentrate in 5 states. For me, it's very suspicious.
yeah,
And I will not talk about more that because I want the people to have the conclusion. And that is the part
yeah,
that I talked before. I don't want to polarize because don't make any sense. In my
yeah,
perspective, the the data, the numbers talk by himself. They can talk
definitely.
everything. If you connect all the points properly, you can give your own conclusions. Some points can be floating around. Say, this don't make very sense. Well, maybe you don't have enough information, or you don't have the complete
Exactly.
picture.
For in that leads me to the next point, because on the one side we were talking about all the how rich Mexico is. And Mexico is not only rich on resources, natural resources, but also on certain economic resources. And we have, when you say this part about not knowing how the structure is behind, we have new parties being created in Mexico. So
Mm,
on the one side, and the most representative ones, we have the PES, Partido Encuentro Solidario, and RSP, Redes Sociales Progresistas.
mhm,
The later one being said that is a new way of Nueva Alianza, which used to be a party by the ex boss chief head, if you want to, of
mm,
these organized the structure of the teachers in Mexico, and Elba Ester Gordillo, but not being head by herself, but by her son and some other people related to her.
mhm, mhm.
There was an audio that was filtered by one of Mexican pop artists
Candidate. Mhm,
and candidate also, mentioning that this new party was associated with the current government, that there is already an elected president for the next period. So on the one side, the discussion is on, are these tiny, because they are tiny and they have just a few people, these parties being created just to get resources and money from from what is in there for the democratic institutions, and on the
mm,
other side, are these to be created for a strategic grouping purposes when it comes to
mhm,
the elections?
mhm. Well, this I need to introduce people that maybe are not very familiar with the politics in Mexico. The satellite parties that are those that talk about Alexis are usually are talking about, and the proofs give us the reason that are only fighting for some amount of resources, are easy way to obtain resources, and basically that is the reason that the people say don't vote for these small parties because attract resources. That is part true, but in this scenario that we are having in Mexico, we need to remember something. In 2018, Morena, the actual party of president and the party that have the majority in the country, was a party that fusionate or incorporate to their group different sections, not only left wing that if you read the points of Morena, Morena is a very left-wing progressive party. It's a beautiful party if you see the statements that they
The
construct.
written form.
But the idea is that a lot of people came Andres Manuel López Obrador to the government, to the power. They need to conciliate with a lot of factions, with right wing, center, with left wing. And Morena transformed in a little bit of Frankenstein. The parties that you are mentioned, they are very useful to make better Morena. In which sense? For example, you say very well, redes sociales progresistas are backed by the magisterium, but not only the magisterium. Also is backed by other factions of Morena that are a little bit more parties and led movement. What is it talking about? In Morena, right now is fighting, and that is the reason of all the conflicts of Morena, about if they continue being a movement or continue be a party movement or be continue a party. Are three options. And you say they don't make any difference. No, they make a difference. Because if you are a party, you are fighting and doing whatever you need to have positions in the government. That is a party. That have some social structure and some way to construct blocks of knowledge. But basically, the final objective is to get people in the power. If you say party movement, you are kind of in the middle. But middle of what? Of this, to obtain some positions in the power. And the other thing that is the movement. The movement is the way that they organize originally. Morena organized only to fight some ideas and organize all the base, all the people in the base of the structure, of pyramidal structure, to have some ideas to follow, get to the power, have some independence and autonomy and energy, have some points that are make coincidence. That is a movement. And they prefer to be congruent with that principles that get a power, get a position in the power. That is a movement. If you have a party movement, you have in the middle of two. Right now, I'm fighting these positions. Redes sociales progresistas, one of the important things, they are part of the Obradorista movement that exists, like in Argentina, Pinochetista. And the Pinochetista and the Obradorista movement, both of those, apparently have right-wing factions, central factions, social democracy factions, and left-wing factions. The Obradorista movement and the parties that are around the Obradorista movement represent different levels of this Obradorista movement. In my idea, it's very good that exist these small parties at this point, because then the population can choose, okay, I don't like particularly the ideas of redes sociales progresistas. I will go for the pure Morena that I believe in that point. The thing that don't believe, if we turn to a two parties democracy, we will have the huge problems that USA is right now having.
Mhm.
That you need to go for a candidate that was not the best. Bernie Sanders was not the best candidate. For some people say that it's not the best candidate. And say, okay, I will go for Biden.
Yeah.
But what is the reason that you need to choose? Because only exists one
Two
party.
possibilities. Yeah. Oh, well, yeah.
And that complicated democracy. That is not democracy, because the war is not turned in two sides. Then, if we have a project in common, then you form alliances. That right now that we have two big alliances: the overdraft side and the
Anti.
opposition. And the
Yes.
opposition, and that is good also. But if you want some difference about these parties, exists this difference. That is not the same, for example, with the Green Party. The Green Party in Mexico, Partido Verde, have a little bit more complicated story. Also, the Labor Party,
Mhm.
Partido de Trabajo in Mexico, also have a little bit more complicated. Right now, we are really clear that PT or Partido de Trabajo is very alineated to the left wing, but not always was like that. In some moment also have alliance with other kind of parties.
Yes, and it goes at there are differences between the federal structures and then the local structures, because even if we can see an alliance for PAN, PRI, and PRD at a federal level, perhaps those are not maintained at a local level. And of course, that tendency has to do with what is best for a certain alliance, right? So if in a certain local specific point, it is better to have an alliance between PRD and Morena. They are two parties who used to have similar things, so they might have an alliance there. And now
Well,
that
only
you point
for
out
make a
how
puntual, if I can make a final
yes,
comment about this. Small parties, they have a lot of budget. We need to regulate that. I am completely agree. Have an excessive budget. Maybe they need to work with less budget until have some amount of percentage of votes or preference. They need to continue exist. I am not believing that we need to avoid to have small parties. We need to have small parties. Okay, because we are talking about right now a particular scenario. But what happens if we want to have a feminist party? If we
sure,
block the idea of small parties, we will not have, for example, in Mexico City, right now we have a new party that is talking about equidad, that have LGBT people and feminism in the candidate patron. For me, make a lot of sense. But well, that is
sure.
the only thing.
Yeah, and just as you were saying in here, we could discuss about this point like for hours, because on the one side, when you say budget regulation, some people have claimed that if we regulate budget and we try to decrease it, then they will try to get their own resources, which will lead to, of course, in some intervention from the organized crime we were discussing earlier. And from the other side, yes, if you disregard
For the
small
industry, also the industry is
industry,
worse
and
than
exactly more than that is another organized crime, and we can say it, and there's no issue, right? So in the end, they're going to owe favors to the ones that they supported. That's reality. And now going forward to what you were saying, so we have these new alliances and new parties, but we have the old ones that have, even of how they were not supported by Mexican population in the last federal elections, they are still there. They are still there, and even if the big names are now in Morena or with Morena, we still have them. And now they are again doing this kind of propaganda against the, just as you mentioned, the Obradorist movement. And I think that there's no shame in there, because those are the parties that we claim that used to put Mexico into trouble in the beginning, and now they are attacking the current president and the current government more than the president, the government, for not solving certain problems and issues that they started, right? Some of them. So how what's your perspective on still having these old parties? Should we still have them, or uh, now that they have received these let's say not approval from people in the voting, should they disappear? And but I mean, they are going to reappear in some other form.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Well,
so
here is the I will talk about two things about these old parties that are the opposition right now. We are lost about these parties. We will be amazing that these parties giving the fight as Obrador give the fight with PAN, for example. If these parties make the position that Lopez Obrador did and Marcelo Ebrard when they are government of Mexico City in each of the time, they do the fight as they do in the states that they govern. Whoa, Mexico will be amazing, because the PAN and PRD that are the PRI also have some states that are still govern and make a lot of improvements and a lot of infrastructure and a lot of ways to find really go against Obradorism and say, okay, you are doing bad with the pandemic, but look, Guanajuato. And you can look Guanajuato because Guanajuato is dying by the COVID and dying by the crime. And say you can say, oh, look Tamaulipas. What do you look in Tamaulipas? If Tamaulipas is take it, the half of the alcaldes and the mayors are taken by the organized crime, and you say, oh, go and see Campeche. What do you see in Campeche with the PRI? That is the thing. The opposition is fighting only against everything that say Obrador, that have a lot of things that need to say about the things that do in Obrador, but they are not counter-attack with results. And that is a problem. But it's not a problem for them. It's a problem for us because we have a opposition that is very poor, not only in words, not only in the way that they express their ideas, that they are very poor. They don't have any line of logic. Also in actions, they don't have any base that you can say, oh, they are giving some ideas by actions of the problems that they're having as a state. Another thing that you are saying, they need to disappear. Well, that is the reason with elections. But definitely it's difficult to disappear until parties like Mexico Libre, the one that Calderon have, exist. If they began to have these new parties that they can move PAN, for example, to another, my cat, to move to another scenario, it's difficult to, for example, if Mexico Libre was approved in the last part of the new parties wave, PAN will be history as PRD. I am pretty sure that if Mexico Libre born as a party, PAN will be disappear, completely disappear. What is the reason? And would be ashamed, to be honest, because the original PAN have something that are valuable. Yes, not in my way to see the world, but at least was an honorable party that have some amount of democracy. Right now, it's taken by Ricardo Anaya and Marco Cortés, and they don't do anything. They are taking the same logics and the same practice that the PRI have and Calderon have, and that make a very poor party.
Yeah, and I don't want to say it, but a little bit of what Obrador did, because Obrador was in the spotlight when he was in PRD, and then he took the spotlight when he founded Morena. And I think that in a way, Raúl Anaya is trying to do that. So,
but you know what is the difference?
what
That
is
Obrador, when they appear, when Obrador take the leadership in PRD, PRD won elections. Elections that never won before.
Yeah.
When Ricardo Anaya and his group take PAN, lose elections. A way that lose elections as never lose election before a PAN.
Yes, and it is a part
And
of
that should be, if PAN continue to be a good party as was in the past, that would be a perfect signal to say, Marco Cortés, a pleasure. You need to go.
yes.
But they don't do that because they have a huge amount of budget, huge amount of money, and huge amount of corruption. That is the reason.
Yeah, and actually in the spots that we can see on TV today, we see a lot of messages about corruption, but I don't think that any of the parties is actually fighting against that. And we can see that in corruption can be many ways. Of course, we have the economic side of corruption, but then when you give certain titles or you give certain seats on positions in government to people, that is, I consider that to be part of corruption. And that's, for example, what happened with a little bit with Salgado Macedonio, because I think that it was more like uh, some kind of old favor. I don't know if it was an old favor, but it was kind of, I felt it like an imposition from Morena that he needed to be there because
Not
what.
really.
Uh-huh.
I will interrupt you that a little
Yeah.
bit. Yes, I think that Salgado Macedonio is a bad decision, but it's a bad decision by the party. Again,
Yeah.
talking about party movement.
Mm-hmm.
The movement don't want Salgado Macedonio because go against the ideas and the foundational receptions that have Morena. As I told you, the movement don't really want, or well, who all wants a position in the government, but it's not the principal objective. What happened with Salgado Macedonio? Salgado Macedonio was from the PRI, but from the old PRI. For the people that they don't know, because maybe are millennials and they are not very informed, the PRI are also the left wing. Originally was the left wing, also the right wing, but also the left wing. The only left wing that exists before PRD in the 90s was, well, electoral left wing. It obviously exists the Communist Party and obviously exists a anarchist group of Mexico. Exists that, but they are not democratic because they are not consolidated as a party. But the democratic, the partidarian or left wing in democracy is personified by the PRI. Salgado Macedonio was part of that wing. Salgado Macedonio was not, it's not that it's a right wing covered by Morena. No, it's a left wing with, but the all left wing that are machismo, misogyny, that have some different way to think in the left wing, and also is apparently associated with sexual violence or sexual threatening at least.
Mm-hmm.
What happened? Salgado Macedonio is incredible popular in Guerrero, and that is a fact.
Yes,
No matter whatever they want to say, Salgado Macedonio is very popular in Guerrero
but
and powerful, but not
and that is,
powerful, not illegal powerful. Huh? Popular, real popular. The people want to go with Salgado Macedonio.
but that's a thing because and that's something to question about because it is not that people want to go with Salgado Macedonia because we have seen some meetings in which people really support a candidate and they have a lot of people. If you see meetings, for example, people following him to Mexico City, I don't, I didn't see as many people. And I know that we're in the pandemic situation, but Salgado Macedonia
No, no,
has been
no, 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 no. In
for
Mexico City,
that
no,
time.
but in
I,
Guerrero, yes. And Guerrero is the state that is choosing government. Salgado
yes,
Macedonio is a person very important and popular in Guerrero. And the faction of party of Morena, no matter that Salgado Macedonio have all the things that are against him, moral things against him, they won the popularity and they will won the government. And I am not agree. I am not saying that I am agree. I am only saying that the reason that and the other thing, and that is something that the pure planning of politics of the position is doing, they are doing more waves about this topic that they have. They are giving all the energies to that topic because that is the topic that they take, because actually right now the topic turns something that makes sense for the rest of the left wing. The discussion about INE and the discussion about the democracy, about the autonomous institution. And that is something that a lot of people disagree. A lot of people disagree with this institution is autonomous, this institution is doing good job. And the opposition is pro institutions, pro structure, pro is taking this topic. Salgado Macedonio is only
a puppet.
exactly. It's something that is really don't matter at this point. Right now, the discussion that matter is that INE should be changed or not.
Yeah.
And that may problematic all the context. But
But
what
I
is the
think
reason that Salgado? Yeah.
yeah, and sorry for interrupting right there, but I think that now that you brought to the table the part of the popularity, I wouldn't like to lose that one because in a sense he's I'm not sure, and that we something we should be we should see because I don't think that Salgado Macedonio is popular because people want him, but because he has been in the spotlight for many years. So he has been in the spotlight for when he has been candidate for other positions. I think I'm not sure if he was the one or his brother to do a movie So there has been a lot
But
of
also is
talk.
a social fighter. That is the reason that I
Yeah,
tell you that that is also left wing. This guy have marched and fight with other guerrerenses against things about the field, about the regions, about the rights. This guy, no matter that we are not liking about the actions that they take over the women's, that is something that I not approve. But this guy also won the popularity by the same reason that Andres Manuel won popularity. They are in the field working with the people and taking the discussion that they take, something that the opposition can do. I say in my stories, when I talk about Salgado Macedonio, something very interesting. If they are really want to do better in that state, that Guerrero, the opposition should take a independent candidate, a woman that was a right fighter about the rights of the women's, and that it should be the candidate. And then the idea of here is different makes sense. If you put another guy that also is a man that again don't have any CV or any background about related with right fight, your again your speech is empty.
yes.
You are discussing, oh, he is a misogynist and violent, threat violent. Yes, also the panistas, also the periodistas, also all these guys.
Uh,
If you
e-
want to
e-
make different, or if you want to make different, give the position, give the power a woman that was a right fighter, no matter that is not a panista or a periodista. Give it to her. And then your speech have some idea, some background, and some concisions. If not, you are fighting with a people that is fighting with the men that are in the field doing the work, being agricultors. That is Salgado Macedonio.
And that is a common issue that we have already discussed. And when you first talked about these differences between the parties, that is something that came to to my mind. So sometimes we are in Mexico, we have to decide on who's not as bad as, instead of
Mhm.
being, oh, he's better than. And also that's the speech that the parties are taking, because I remember back in 2000, the early 2000s, yes, we still had the speech of, oh, and we are better because we did this, and we are better because we did that. But once Lopez Obrador tried to get the power, and I'm not trying to make him the star of this, but we started to have these black campaigns or dirty campaigns, if you want to call them like that, in which is like, oh, he's worse because he did this. He's worse because he did that. Yeah, they are worse because they did this. So it is like I'm starting this approach of I'm not as bad as, right? And then you have these points, like for example, being a social activists in a way. But then, of course, just as you mentioned, we don't have someone that qualifies to be real better than that. There might be and there must be people like that, but unfortunately, parties are not giving the focus to them.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yes, that is true. I think that Obrador have indirect fault about this situation. And what is the reason that I say indirect? Because Lopez Obrador um, may complicate the politics for the rest of politics. You can not like Lopez Obrador, and you can, I say, the people that are hearing us, maybe you don't like Lopez Obrador, and maybe you don't believe in the things that they do or doing or thinking. That is perfectly fair. The problem with the opposition and the people that don't like Obrador is that they are fighting with a cartoon of Obrador. In the moment that you believe and you start thinking that Obrador is one of the greatest minds in politics in Mexico and evaluate like this, then you can do something. What happened with the opposition? The opposition, since the 2000 that won the Jefatura de Gobierno in Mexico City, the government in Mexico City, they began to believe that the problem with Obrador was very, very high. Obrador is not that it's problematic because it's like Maduro, like Evo Morales. like Hugo Chavez. No, that is not the real problem. The real problem with Obrador is that he's very good politician. And no one, except few exceptions, and the few exception is, for example, Diego Fernandez de Ceballos. That is the reason that reborn after 6 years that they basically died. Because only few people in Mexico have the same skills in politics than Obrador. Very few people. And that may complicate the fight for the rest of the parties. And that is the reason that are so extenuate to make the speech that, oh, this is terrible, because it's the only things that they have to go against him, because they are fighting with a cartoon, not with a real politician. If they start thinking as, okay, Obrador have these things that are good and these things that are bad. And that is the reason that the most problematic critics of this government born and is constructed from the left. The people that is difficult to say you are not true is the people that is from the left wing that is saying you need to do more to the left, more feminist, go completely out of all kind of privatization about the energy industry, go out of all these convenience with other companies, say no to Televisa, say no to TV Azteca. That are the things that are very difficult to say that are not true about the government of Obrador.
Yeah.
That is the thing.
Yeah.
Other good politicians that have the same skills as Obrador, Salinas, but they don't have any popularity because Salinas is the
Anymore.
favorite villain. But for very few, I don't think in any other good politicians that can go against in speech or in logic or in construction of thinking that goes similar to Obrador.
And I think that in that regard, Morena has done their job on getting those who might be a little bit of the competence. For example, I'm thinking just like the old school ones and those who have been adopted from other parties that might represent a little bit of threat if they still organize things in there.
Exactly. Yes.
That's a
Yes,
good
exactly.
strategy if you say it like that. Okay. Last but not least, and continue talking about Morena. We are already seeing here. I'm going to mix up a little bit of what is going on at a federal level with local level. So Morena in their spots are already using social programs and COVID vaccines in their TV spots. So it is specifically the last one that from the Monreal with Monreal when he says like now we have these social programs who is benefiting a lot of people. And if you let the other parties go back to power, they will disappear them in to enable corruption. He's openly saying that. And we know that the message behind that is like, keep voting for us or you won't have that program anymore, which might be true. But at local level, and this is something that I know because my brother is autistic and he is receiving the disabled people social program. These representatives that are called servidores de la nación, specifically the one for this town here in Michoacan, is going house by house of the people who have this program, saying vote for Morena, otherwise, if we keep in the power and you didn't vote, we're going to take away the program from you, from your family. So, and that is very old way because that sounds to me very pre-pan, very old school. So in that regard, and what amazed me a little bit is that the president itself from Morena, not the president, but Monreal, is taking these messages in open national TV when they have their sports. Is that something we should that should be valid to use these social programs for self-promoting as a party?
Again, I will divide the two scenarios because are different legally. The second scenario that you say, the servidores de la nación, that is illegal. And actually, in the last 2 or 3 matutine conference of friends, They are demanding that kind of stuff. And Andres Manuel say that it's illegal and they need to stop doing. And if they found something that is doing, that will be fire. That is in discourse and in public communication. I hope that that will go to turn to facts and real have some consequence. But that is because that is illegal. And if you don't have some consequence, that is something that we will need to remind, because definitely that is not legal. And I hope that have some consequence of this, because it's not only, as you say, it's in regional and in some towns that this happen, these things, and need to be correct, because any people that is part of the government, they can do these kind of things. These are properly illegal. About the spots, that is completely legal, because they are not conditioned anything. They are only being by spots, by speech, and that is completely legal because they are candidates. It's illegal if Andres Manuel say it, because they
His
and
government.
any secretary and all this stuff, because they are part of the government. But as a candidate, I can say anything that basically is true because it's part of my campaign, and that is not illegal.
It's not
For
illegal.
example, if for example you go and take the vaccine, and the people that give it the vaccine say, "Oh, this is thanks to Morena, eh? You need to think thanks to Morena." That is illegal, and that is use of the vaccines to proselytism. Indirect, that gives some repercussions in the votes, yes, but also that we are living in a pandemic have some consequence in the votes.
Mhm.
In a lot of other countries, in Mexico is not the case. Very lucky, Andres Manuel. But in other countries, for example, the green, the one of the reasons that Trump lose is because the vaccines don't arrive in time. Don't arrive in time, because actually they can arrive in time, but they don't want to arrive in time. By the way, international politics that I don't want to mess it up. But
Yeah.
as I told you, the two scenarios are different and have different consequences. For me, it's part of the campaign. As way that right now it's part of the campaign that David Monreal is in the, because he's taking the uh, go long hand and take the butt of a woman. That is part of the campaign. The opposition, they can use that as a proof that it's a pig and indecent and whatever they want to use. That is a campaign, and they are completely legal to say whatever they want. They can say that are the group that they put the social programs. That is correct. That is not entering the fact that use the social programs as part of the election, because they are not using the social programs. Use the social program is the thing that is happening in your locality. That is use the social programs. Using a spot is publicity. It's something that they is true. They use actually is true. Morena implement that social programs and are part of the program of election of the 4T. That is completely true. If it is not true, that say that the other opposition, they will put out that programs. That is
Yeah,
another
and,
thing.
and and what surprises me, and I know that this is we should, of course, in an idealistic world, that we're talking about idealistic world versus and that's a complete whole different conversation versus real world, because one of the main things that Morena has always said is we're different. And then when
Mhm.
they're doing this, that really reminds me of PRI saying, yes, we created IMSS, we created ISTE, we created all these institutions. And it's like, okay, so I don't really see the difference in that regard, only in that regard. I'm not saying the rest of the things, because we have observed, just as you mentioned, some of the capital that we had at federal level from taxes, from many things, is now going and being
Mhm.
delivered
Mhm.
to disabled people, which is great. And specifically in my case, and from my perspective, because I have of course, some bias in here, because I have
Yeah.
I have my brother. I say, well, that's great. But then when I
Yes.
see all these things, I'm also not blind to not point them out. So,
Yes.
and that's
Yes. Maybe it's not the phrase. Maybe it should change. We are not that equally. We are some kind of different. Yes, I am. I agree. they are not completely different. A lot of tension, I will say.
Yeah, and it comes from the
Uh,
that's what you
and
mentioned.
I think that we need to continue saying these kind of things, and we need to continue talking about these kind of things, and don't get blind. That, as you say, these kind of scenarios only make you think that maybe are not that different, but maybe are different enough for me to go and vote for them. Maybe,
Sure. And for other people.
and that is a completely different discussion.
Totally. So I think that we can, those points were very interesting. And just as you mentioned, we might have some other space to talk about specifically each of them because each of them have required their own spaces and discussions. And well, just summarizing, so we talked about the violence against politicians and divided into two, just as you mentioned. The new parties being created, yes, they're part of what is existing, but it's necessary because if not, we won't have any way to choose from. Then, well, the old parties are trying to be in a position, but unfortunately, they are not being as good a position as in the moment Andres Manuel was. Then Morena uses social programs in spots that's legal, but if they are trying to condition that at a local level, that would be illegal. And that is something that we have to spot out. So Becerra, thank you very much for accepting the
You're
invitation and
welcome.
booking this for this space. And well, everyone, that's the end of this episode. And don't forget to follow Becerra on his social media. Can you let us know your social media, please?
Ba Becerra, BAH Becerra, in all the social media that you can find. That
And
is.
don't forget also to listen to his podcast, Los Millennials y Hablan de Política, on YouTube or Spotify. So I
Exactly.
think you closed by the end of January, but when are you trying to go again with a new season?
I will expect that the things go better a little bit because in Chile right now it's complicated. So I will
Mhm.
wait in a little bit. I hope that from summer we can start again a new season. And also the people, the social media is active. If they propose some topics, they are very welcome.
Okay, that's perfect. And yes, don't forget to follow him on his social media because he's uploading stories talking about these kind of issues. So thank you for being here today, and thank you very much for all the time.
You're welcome.
And we are of